everyone. I am Destiny Ray.
And I'm Tia DeShazor. And we are bold. We believe that Black women will change the world.
And we specifically do this by building up Black women in the performing arts for the restoration of culture.
Tonight, we get to live out one of our values, cultivating wholehearted for one another community.
For one another community creates space for us to see each other, know each other, and care for each other in bold ways. And tonight, we are excited to have two incredibly bold women having a bold conversation.
So grab a notepad and a drink of your choice and enjoy bold conversations with Sheila K. Davis and Liesl Tommy.
Hi, I'm Sheila K. Davis, and I'm the founder and artistic director of New Professional Theater, and I am just so pleased today to introduce Liesl Tommy. Now, Liesl Tommy has directed all over the United States, and I will give you just a few of the theater companies that have been graced and blessed to have her to direct a show. The Berkeley Rep, the California Shakespeare Festival, the Steppenwolf Theater Company, La Jolla Theater Company, the Dallas Theater Center, the Public Theater. I mean, you can get tired just naming her credits. Then she went and directed a show on Broadway with an Oscar winner, Lupita Nyong'o. The show moved from the Public Theater to Broadway, and it was the first and only show to have an all-female cast. It was written by a female, and it was directed by Liesl Tommy, and she became the first and only African-American in the history of theater to be nominated for Best Director. Whoa. What is she doing now? She gets a major film. It's a biopic of the Queen of Soul, Miss Aretha Franklin. It is starring the Oscar winner Jennifer Hudson, the Oscar winner Forrest Whitaker, Mary J. Blige, Marlon Wayans, Liesl Tommy, girlfriend. Okay. You know, my heart is racing just saying what I'm saying. So now I just have a couple of questions because there's so many sisters that just want to know, you know, they're just yearning to find out, how does this happen, Liesl? What, did you have a strategic plan? Was it serendipity? I mean, did you have a mentor? I mean, what happened?
I did not have a mentor. I always wanted one. There were people like you, Sheila, who along the way, when I encountered them, said to me, "You're doing something special. You are someone special." And that meant so much, because when you're out there, in the cut, just feeling ignored by the white establishment, frankly, those moments where you feel like people really see you mean so much, because you do feel invisible. You feel like you're just toiling. When I first came, I kind of looked for that, but the honest truth was there weren't that many Black women who had done what I was looking to do, to be honest.
Same here. You were a first. So who does the first talk to? Who does the first lean? Whose shoulder do you lean on?
And, there were some very high profile Black directors, but who were older, a couple of generations older than me, and they were men. And to be brutally honest, they were very protective of their turf. They had a small patch of green that they had been allowed to conquer, and they were protective of it. And I understood it. They were just kind of like, "Hey, next generation, I'm not quite done with my work. I'm not ready for you." You know what I mean? That's sort of the vibe I got. And so I was kind of like, it's all, I get it. I respect it. I get it. But when I started off as an actor, and when I switched to directing because I felt that I needed more control over the content. You know, as an actor, you really are at the mercy of what's sent to you unless you also write. And I just felt like I wanted to say something political. I felt like I had a point of view around race, around women's stories. And so I made the switch, and I had been directing since I was quite young, you know, this things here and there. And I reached out to writers, to Black women playwrights. Those were the people that I reached out to early on. And someone who gave me one of my first gigs was Lynn Nottage. You know, she was directing a short play for an evening of short plays at the Women's Project. And then from there, I did a play by Tracy Scott Wilson called The Good Negro about the civil rights movement at the Public Theater. And, you know, and Tracy and I had been working together for like about 4 years on that play. You know, doing the research and developing, workshopping, all of it. And then Tracy and I became extremely close through that process. She came with me to South Africa to visit my family, and we worked on the play there. We went I took her to Robben Island to look at where Mandela had been imprisoned. You know, so it was really we worked on it like sisters. You know, and I do tend to have that relationship with my collaborators who primarily are Black women. You know, and in fact, when it was time for me to bring a writer on to Good Negro, to Respect, the Aretha Franklin film, I brought Tracy on. And so we worked very closely again together on it. Those relationships, the relationships I have with Black women are sacred to me. They're, I feel that you have to create an environment where you feel safe, where you can thrive. And that's, for me, that's what, you know, collaborative relationships with other women are, with particularly Black women. You know, so that's what, so, you know, and then I moved into theater and did a lot of new work and classics and worked around the country. And I worked myself almost to death, I will say. I had that thing, you know, that everybody's daddy told them that you had to be better than everybody around you. And I took that to heart. So I just felt like I had to work harder. I had more to prove. And I wish, in retrospect, if I could, you know, speak to my younger self, I feel I've learned something from this current younger generation when they talk about self-care.
Oh, yes. Yes. That I'm working with Bold, which is generational. And the fact that this website is up called Darkness Rising for the theater community for mental health. As I said, I've lived to see some things.
I know.
So it's making me very, very happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
No one was talking about self-care back then.
Oh, no. Or mental health. No.
Oh, no. They were just expecting you to work yourself to death.
Yeah.
You know?
Be crazy.
I did. You know, I burnt out. I had to kind of find my, I used up all my adrenals. You know, I did everything that you now know we shouldn't do. But I had a lot to prove.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there were so many times I was the first person who looked like me in a building,
Mm-hmm.
an entire building. And I would, you know, sometimes be met with hostility. You know, there'd be a new artistic director who came in and was ready to make, you know, shake things up, but they hadn't really communicated with their staff, you know? So I'm going in there and they're all, you know, you have a technical director or a production manager or an associate producer who's just looking at you like, you're the diversity hire, aren't you? You know? And you're like, if you had just done even a little bit of research into me and my work, you would not be coming at me with this. But yes, we're just going to breathe and, you know, but, you know, it's just unnecessary stress. But it added to that feeling of like, I have to work better than everybody and be better. And, you know, that was an added layer of stress that in retrospect, I certainly did not need. And now I'm very different when it comes to that kind of thing. I enter a space and with the attitude of that they are lucky to have me. And I don't have to be grateful to every single person I encounter, which is a little bit how I was made to feel back then. You know what I mean? So, you live and you learn. But there was a point where I felt like I was ready. I always wanted to direct films. And I think it was probably like in 2014 that I said to my theater agent, I really want to direct films at some point. And he kind of just went, uh-huh. And then he never said anything about it again. And I was mortified. I was like, oh,
Right.
But
Right.
I have been with this theater agent for a very long time. And then when my show Eclipse moved to Broadway, he said, and I was doing this project called Frozen for Disney, at Disneyland. And I was flying to LA, and he said to me, all right, so I want to set you up with a meeting with a television agent from the agency. And I was like, what? And he said, it's time. I heard you when you said you wanted to direct film, a few years ago. But the thing is, we didn't have anything to go to LA with.
Right.
And he said, and now you do. You have a show on Broadway that people have seen. People from LA have flown to New York to see. And it's true, they had. And you have, there's a Tony Award nomination. So they want to meet you. Because, the truth is Hollywood is a heat-seeking missile. You can't fight them off when there's heat, and you can't find them when there's no heat.
Oh no.
You're like, where are you when you don't have anything? And it's crazy, when they think that you have something about
trajectory. And it started out with the sisterhood.
Yes.
And it grew from there. And that's absolutely marvelous. Now, you're committed to diverse and inclusive work. Now, what obstacles did you overcome to not be placed in a box? You've directed everything from William Shakespeare to August Wilson, okay? And when doors open, Liesl, how did you recognize to just walk through, considering you were walking alone?
That's such a great question. I think because of my training, okay, I'm going to take it back even further. Growing up in South Africa during apartheid, I was raised in the struggle, and my father was someone who was an activist, and my mother was someone who was always challenging the status quo. So that kind of, thinking was bred into me from a very early age. And when I say like the struggle mentality is that you are going to fight for what is rightfully yours, is basically what the apartheid struggle taught us.
Right.
And so, but there's something that got embedded in me that there was something that was rightfully mine to begin with. And in my case, I guess that was my dream, my dream for myself. So that's the one thing. And then the other thing is coming from the continent of Africa, where you are ultimately the majority. And I think our friends from the Caribbean have the same feeling, right? Where they were raised, where they were the majority. So that does something to your insides in terms of how you think about yourself and how you value yourself. And one of the hardest parts of being Black in America, and I mean, I have light skin privilege, right? I always wonder if there were some of those early jobs where, I got them because white people might have felt more comfortable with me because I was light skinned. You never know, but I did wonder that, but there's something that it takes a big toll on you to always feel like you are in the minority culturally. It's, and it's ancestral, and it's just, it's relentless. So it's not it's not only that you are in the minority, but that you are in the minority that is structurally it's built to keep you oppressed. And I lived that in South Africa, where the laws were, it was just blatant. Apartheid was as structural as it gets. And here it's the same, but it was just sneakier. It was not.
It wasn't sneaky at all, Liesl. I'm of a certain age. It wasn't sneaky at all. I saw the white and the colored signs. Schools were segregated.
Yes.
It was so bad in Tallahassee, Florida, the governor closed down the pools when they passed the Civil Rights Act of desegregation. So no children will swim, white or black, because we're not swimming together.
That's right.
And I will never forget how hot I was that summer.
Oh my God.
And just pulling up to carnivals and wanting to go in and saying, Mom, I love that Ferris wheel.
Yes.
It was just down the block.
Yeah.
But you couldn't go in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're right. What that does to you mentally. And I'm 10 years old, Liesl, so I'm not 2. So I know exactly what you're saying. So if someone just constantly offered you spunk in the Colored Museum, and that's the only thing they offered you as a director, how did you break out of that box and turn around and kill Les Miserables and kill the classic?
Well, here's the thing is, because I was doing a lot of new plays, right? Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right about those offers. Those came too. And, and I had a long chat with my agents, because I switched agents at one point because my other agents were no longer serving me. Mm-hmm. And I said to them, it's different to represent someone like me. And I don't think you have anybody like me. So you just need to know that there is also going to have to be advocacy. And he was like, okay. He didn't really know what that meant. And then he learned real quick, which was the year where I got offered. It was the first year I didn't have new plays that I had been developing that were ready for production. And I got, I think, 5 offers for The Mountaintop and 5 offers for not A Raisin in the Sun, the one that man wrote, I blocked it out. The quote unquote, it was a white man who wrote that play that was supposed to be like the sequel to Raisin in the Sun. What is that play called?
That we've got to think
it was
of
on
it.
Broadway, of course. Oh man, I'm blanking on it.
By Lorraine Hansberry, but it was a sequel to Raisin in the Sun.
Yeah. And it was on Broadway and it was everywhere. So they offered, and I was like, I'm not directing that. But I basically got, from regional theaters, from New York theaters, Clybourne Park. Thank you, Justin. All of these offers from theaters that I had no relationship with. That was just what they. And so I said to my agent, you see, this is what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And he went, okay. So he reached out to some of those theaters and he said, she's not available. But what else have you got in your season for her?
Yeah, so you had to advocate. You had to be an advocate for Liesl Tommy. You had to speak up. I got you. Now, Liesl, one of the brimming question, theater, film, everything, it's so collaborative. When you're choosing your team, your scene designer, your lighting designer, your cast, what is the one trait that is most important for you? Because I know you want to create a safe space. And I have been in enough spaces that are not safe. Until what can we learn from you about creating a space that is decent, that also gets the work done? Because some people honestly don't believe that if it's a decent space.
I know. I mean, I think because I was an actress, it's so important to me that creating a safe space. I had so many rehearsal rooms where I just felt like I want to leave.
So did I.
And so that really, really matters to me. And I'm talking about from designers to stage managers to the intern, the stage managers, PAs. I don't want somebody sitting in the corner with a stank face. I just can't have it. You know what I mean? Like we have to be radiating positivity in my rehearsal room. Because the other thing is I am working mostly with Black actors on Black content that is really emotionally demanding. There's a certain kind of performance that I'm interested in, which is raw and really deeply investigated, and it's and it's not fair to ask actors to go there like that and not provide a loving environment. That's my belief. Now, there's a million ways that people can direct, and you can see amazing work on stage, and they have a different process, but that's for me. That's what I need. So when I was crewing up on the film, I had to advocate over and over again for women and people of color in department head positions. And also, this is something that I learned from Ava DuVernay, who gave me my first television job on Queen Sugar. She saw clips and she reached out and she was like, I want you to direct my TV show. And I actually want to tell you the story of that, because I had two theater projects lined up and it conflicted. And I said to her, I'm so sorry, I can't do it. I have these, I'm doing something at Williamstown and something at Steppenwolf. And she went, you know what, I'm just going to send the offer along to your television agent and you all can talk about it. And I was like, oh, that's nice, Ava. I mean, I'm booked. And she was like, okay. And she sent the offer to my agents. And my agent, called me and he was like, I have an offer from Warner Brothers for this is what we've been working for 2 years. I've been going to meetings and
let the sister from Alabama.
That's right.
Pull the sister in from South Africa.
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I said, Ryan, it's my television agent. I'm booked. I have 2 plays. And he said, Liesl Tommy. He said, television directing is the hardest field in the business to break into. It's extremely cliquey. He said, I have clients who have Academy Awards for short films or documentaries who cannot get a television directing gig. It's extremely enclosed. People hire the same people that, and there's a lot of money at stake in a short amount of time. You have to really be fast, and no one wants to take that risk. So he said, so if Ava is offering this to you, she's also created a thing on Queen Sugar where you are safe to fail, because she's bringing a lot of first-time directors into her. He's like, you're never going to get a better opportunity to do your first episode than this.
Wow.
And I reached out to my friends Lynn Nottage and Tracy Scott Wilson, among other people, and they were like, you got to do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You got to do it. And, I had never, ever left. And both of these plays were new plays with young Black playwrights. And it was impossible for me to, imagine doing that. But I reached out to both of them and they understood. They were just like, you got to go do that. Yeah. And they were of the belief that, me succeeding and making that crossover was something good for all of us. So I did it. And I called Ava and I said, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to come, I'd like to come a month early and observe. And she laughed. She said, Liesl, you don't have to come a month early. You can come like 5 days, but she's like, I saw clips. You don't need to come a month early. And I said, yeah, but I've never directed on television before. I have to be as informed as possible. And she's like, you'll learn everything you need to know in 5 days. Don't worry. And I said, I'm going to come a month early. And she got really upset. She's like, we can't pay you for the housing. We can't pay you for a month. And I said, I don't need you to, I will take care of it. I just need you to make space for me on your set to observe. And she was very emotional. She was very moved because, in film and television, people don't do things for free.
Oh, no. But that's that work ethic. Okay. And that's why you came on today, because you're a special person. You didn't say to me, Sheila, you're not Robin Roberts. You have that. You just have that extra piece, that compassionate piece, and it comes through in your work. So, but Liesl, I didn't go to law school. I majored in theater at Spelman College. But somehow along the way, I really feel I should have taken a course in negotiation. Okay. Women in the United States make 18% less than men. I don't care if you're a CEO or if you're at McDonald's, wherever you are, we make less than men, plain and simple. Okay? So it's even less for minority women, the disparity. So my question is, been called to replace somebody in a show, making less than what the person was making that came before me, but the tickets are still the same. How do we break this vicious cycle that we as African American women are literally worthless and that we have no price?
It is diabolical. You're absolutely right. And something I used to tell actors when I was would speak to them in classes or workshops is I would always say about auditions, people will value you at the value you place on yourself. So the ones who walk into the room apologizing for their very existence, you feel uncomfortable on their behalf, and you just kind of want to get the audition over with and get them out again, because they're just literally coming and going, I'm so sorry. Okay, thanks for having me. I'm just going to take up this much space. I'm going to be done, and then I'm out. And it's just so confusing, because then you just want them to be out too, because they don't seem comfortable. And if you walk in and you're relaxed and you're self-possessed and you're prepared and you take up all the space that you need to, it's so much more fun for them and for us, and it makes you linger, and it makes you ask them about themselves, where are they from, where they go to school, because there's an energy that you want to engage in. Now, something that has been interesting to me is the musical Hamilton, because I have watched men of color come into auditions who have been in Hamilton, stand up straighter than I've ever seen them stand up, take up more space in the audition room than I've ever seen them take up. Their spines are long, their feet are planted, their voices sound amazing, and their chest is open. It's such beautiful manifestation of selfhood. Mm-hmm. And it's because they've been allowed to take up all the space they want on a stage, a Broadway stage. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it gives you that confidence that you can never, ever have unless you have been given that permission, right? And I need to see that for Black women, because there still hasn't been that thing that allows, Black woman after Black woman after Black woman to just be their full selves and take up their full space. Because when you get to do that is when you start asking for what you deserve. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's a vicious cycle when you're always just, when you're fighting over scraps, you think that you only deserve scraps.
Because one of the young actors in Bold told me that my agent, this other Caucasian girl, we were signed with the same agent. We're doing the same thing, and I'm getting less. So that means that my agent is also not telling the producers or the general managers. They're not advocating for me.
So the thing that, this is what I do. And it took me a long time to do it, but I just say, okay, so what's the average? What's the norm what's the industry norm? Mm-hmm. And then I ask what the most successful, most Tony Award winning white male director would get for the same project. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then I asked what the most successful, most Tony Award winning white woman would get for the same project. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of tell them how to negotiate from there.
Okay.
But the thing is, because I just need the information. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But the thing is that, there was a period where even when I had that information, I was like, oh, but that's a good offer for me. Mm-hmm. And I had to say to myself, no. Uh-huh. Whatever offer they come at you with, you have to go back with something because it's a negotiation, right? Like it's expected, and they can be insulted with what you come back with or not. That's none of your business.
Okay. I got you. Thank you for that.
The negotiation has to take place. Because I can promise you right now, that is what white men are doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the women too.
Oh, yes.
But a lot of young directors don't know they have to handle a budget when they get out in the real world, Lisa. Okay. Have you ever been in a season where you were handed a budget, where your show was the lowest budget, and it came during Black History Month, because that's what used to go on in regional theater? And what did you do? How did you change? How did you turn that around?
With one particular show, that was a very important show to me. It was a new play. It was political. It was historical. There was music. I made the design concept as elaborate as it was possible to make it.
Lisa.
And when I say elaborate, I mean I had live video feed. I had pre-recorded video. I think I had 20 video screens on the stage. I put it all in there. If I could have had a donkey on that stage, I would have had it.
I laugh very loudly. Okay, go easy on me, girl.
Yeah, I went for it, and of course, because I had a suspicion that was what was happening, you know. And when they came back and they said to me, and I mean, it was literally the day before we started rehearsal. They said, "Can we just talk about the design?" I said, "Sure." And they said to me, "Do you really feel like dramaturgically this show needs this?" And I thought to myself, do you know how many shows I've seen with video design that did not need it, but had it because it was a white show and it was a white director that was experimenting? And I just said, I think so. And the designs are in. Like, it's done. Like, we're not gonna redesign the day before we start rehearsal.
Okay.
But you know, I do think that was a tactic when you kind of blindside a director like that so close, that it makes it feel like it's a crisis and that it's up to you to solve it. And then, you know, another version of me in another time would have immediately been like, oh my God, I'm going to break this theater. And it's just, it's not true. But I mean, the reason I did that is because I have been there. I have been in that black box space. I have been in a place that really should have been a rehearsal room as opposed to a theater.
Right.
But because it's a black show, you get the minimum. You know, and that's not for me anymore. And the honest truth is, like, once I did something like Les Mis, and I made that theater so much money.
Yes.
It was a huge success. They were doing what they called dynamic pricing. They were charging $300 and something for a seat at a regional theater because the show was so successful. Yeah. And, you know, and that was a place where I had 100% support. You know, that artistic director I had known since grad school. And he was one of those people who, you know, he was a believer and he was a supporter at Dallas Theater Center. But I understood that I took a huge, big conceptual swing with that show. I cast people of color in all the lead roles, and I made it contemporary, which it had never been done before. And it was, you know, it was a big success. So I that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, well, that came from my head. The thing that made that thing fresh was just me being as creatively free as I could be because I was supported. I was allowed to be. So, you know, once you have those experiences, you know, if you're smart, you pay attention to that, you put that in you internalize that success, and it gives you freedom for the next time and the next time and the next time.
And what I've gotten through every answer that you've given me is that you are truthful. You speak up immediately.
Yeah.
They know who is walking in the room. I don't think you pull any surprise punches. No. And, you know, honestly, when I go into my meetings now,
what I call the Hollywood meetings. When I go into meetings with the big studios and with the big production companies, I am extremely outspoken. I will toss in a curse here and there. I will talk politics. I will get loud because that's who I will be in the process.
Okay.
And they need to know that in advance, because I don't have time once I'm hired to train them about what it's going to be like.
I got you. And this is the last question. I'm so grateful. This is a kind of deep one. You've lived through apartheid and the systemic racism in America. How has living through the global pandemic of racism impacted who you are and the art that you create?
Wow, Sheila.
I had to read that question. That's the rest of them I'm just, talking.
I think about that self-care thing a lot these days, because I've had time to, to just, I've been editing the film during this downtime, quote unquote downtime. But I do feel like part of this drive that I have, that at times has not always been healthy in terms of the way I've treated myself, right? Comes as part of the price that we pay psychologically for being oppressed, right? There's an internalization of that oppression that makes you think that you don't deserve time off, or you cannot claim a true day of rest. So something that, I and a lot of colleagues are advocating for right now is a 5-day work week in rehearsals, and no more 10 out of 12s. Because those are things that purely benefit the producers, because the less time that, if you do 6-day rehearsal weeks instead of 5, that means that's 1 week less that they have to pay us, right? So there's no reason for that except for money. And it takes an enormous toll on us and our families. And there's no reason for it except for money. So I don't know why the people who get paid the least have to work the most.
Tell me about it.
So that to me is, ways that I feel now, these are the ways that I'm advocating for myself and my peers, because I feel like there's some plantation thinking in some of these rules that we've just allowed to happen. So that, that's the negative, is that because you've been trained to think that you don't deserve as much as somebody else, you take these, and some of these systemic inequities with you don't even question them, because there's so much to question, but I do feel like now one of the things about the pandemic is that it's allowed us to take a look around and be like, so wait, going back to normal, is that actually what we want? What parts of the normal do we want, and what parts should we let go of? So that's the one thing. Sheila, what was the second part of that question?
The second part is, how does it reflect your art? How has it impacted who you are and the art you create?
I mean, when I think that because so much of the work that I do is political, and so much is about uplifting women and Black women's voices, that has been the consequence of the reality of racism and the reality of living in two cultures that upheld white supremacy. And so in my work, it's been constantly showing the ways that we are human and deserve everything, not just better, but everything. It's just, I don't even know how to not do that. I've been offered in this film and television space some really lucrative projects, but they don't speak to that thing and I can't do them if they don't speak to that thing.
Yes. They try to drill it out of you. You know, Liesl, I don't know how many ways I can thank you for this conversation. The women of Bold are really going to benefit from this conversation. Women all over the world will benefit from knowing you and your work. And
thank you so much, Sheila. I want to just say one thing to the women of Bold. I wish I could see every single one of your faces. But one thing that, that Sheila taught me early on when I first met her, I directed her in a reading and I was a baby director. But she saw something in me and she named it. She told me that she thought that I was special, and she told me that she thought I was going to go on and do great things. And no one was talking to me like that. But one thing that I took away from that exchange with Sheila is when I see young women who I think are special, I tell them that too. I don't look at them as potential people who are going to take my whatever it is I think I have. I look at them as young women that is my responsibility to see and to encourage. And I would just say to you, women of Bold, internalize that now, because it's going to make you a better and more generous and more open artist. And that's how we thrive, is when we're open.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. And I really hope that I do not scream through the entire movie. It will be very bad for the people sitting in the theater, okay? I will try, okay? I will see your face, but I'm overwhelmed. Thank you. Thank you. And enjoy. You're taking some time off. You're doing some self-care now?
Yes, I'm in North Carolina. I'm here just getting some nature.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Goodbye. Thank you.